everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. I am your host, Olivia Akin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Sunita Kumar. Sunita is an entrepreneur, business strategist, and business alchemist and clarity architect who helps seasoned entrepreneurs break through plateaus and step fully into who they are meant to be in their business and leadership. With a Cornell engineering degree, an MBA, and an MSc, plus 15 plus years of experience across corporate, consulting, and multiple entrepreneurial ventures, including a patented first-to-market healthcare product, Sunita brings a uniquely multidimensional perspective to growth and success. Her work blends strategic business insight with human design and neuroscience, helping her clients cut through noise and access their true strengths and build businesses aligned with their authentic voice. She works with established entrepreneurs at inflection points where what's worked before no longer holds. Her work cuts through surface level strategy to pinpoint the underlying misreads driving friction. So the next move is clear and actually works. You can find Sunita by going to her website, linktr.ee/I am Sunita Kumar, and listen to her podcast, Clear Signal. Hello, Sunita. It's fantastic having you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
To start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Sunita Kumar?
So from success as a business owner and as a human to me means that you're operating in the world in the way that feels in alignment with you, which means, in real words, like you're not forcing yourself into a model that doesn't fit. Your business works for how you operate versus what should work. And you're putting in effort, but you're in this feels good. You're in flow. You're like, I was built to do this. I'm leveraging my unique gifts in the way that I'm meant to do it. And things feel hard at times, but they don't feel like friction. You don't feel like you're pushing a rock uphill. And in the grand scheme, if you're a business owner, your business fits into your life. So you're not sacrificing your life for your business.
And I want to dive deeper into that, because when you were just talking about that, you mentioned pushing the rock uphill and not feeling like, yeah, there's always those moments. And I talk about now, like, even when I'm stressed in my business, I'm like, there's joy in it. Like, I don't look at it and sit down like, oh my God, like, how many hours do I have to do this? What do I have to do? Where I remember towards the end of my corporate time, I'd look at that clock and I'd be like 10 hours, okay, 9 hours, 58 minutes. And I'm like counting down the minutes left, like, because I didn't want to be there. So for you, when you talk about pushing that rock uphill, what does that really mean for you? And how have you experienced that in life where the signals then go off like, okay, this isn't in alignment?
Right. So much there, right? Because most of my audience and my clients are older. They're over 40 and, definitely 35 plus. So we've been conditioned to what effort is. Hard work, high performance means XYZ. And a lot of the business world up until now has been very much hustle. You don't have the mindset. You don't want to grind. You don't want to get up at 5 a.m. You feel tired. You push through that. It's very masculine. My clients are mostly women. It's very masculine. And that is a sign. It is not something to push through. If you have feeling constant friction, that is not something to ignore. And so to give you an example from one of my past businesses, you mentioned my health product. That was the latest thing I did. I'm literally had just closed that earlier this spring. And towards the end of that, I would get a client order. I'm like, oh, I got to ship this product. It wasn't like, wow, I'm helping someone optimize their health. Wow, I just put money in my account. Wow, I'm amortizing the inventory that I bought and I'm making money. It was like, oh my God, I got to ship this product. And I would border on unprofessional. I'd get it. My shipping is like X number of days, but I would push it to ship. And it was a to do versus a get to. And you could be like, well, you had fulfillment and you had this. At the time my business was booming, I had a fulfillment house. I wasn't doing the tactics. That's not it. It's that chapter of my life had ended, and that wasn't the path moving forward for whatever reason. 8 years, did it, wanted to do it, great. And one of the things that I talk about in my business is human design. It's one of the pillars of my business. And human design is life force direction, right? So there's the concept of flow, which we know that famous book Flow, which is you're in the zone, you're creative, you're going, you lose time. That's a mental model. Human design is a body system. So I am of the camp that when you're energized, you are doing what you're supposed to do, and you're excited about it within reason. Challenges turn into solutions. Rest periods become days, not weeks. Mm-hmm. And you are magnetizing the right opportunities to you because you're lit up by what you're doing.
And I think it's so important that you mentioned your own realization there with the healthcare, because there's times I also have gotten advice even in my business and I didn't understand of like, they'd be like, okay, start this, like write this course and it could be amazing. And I'd hear this from like a consultant. I'm like, okay, take it to mind, sing with it. And I'm like, okay, is this really the path forward? Especially certain consultants who are like, oh, if you want to make it to 7 figures, this is the only path to really do it. And I'd sit there and I'd be like, okay, I guess I'll try it. Like, what's the worst thing? But the whole time, like to your point, I'd delay. Like, okay, I'll do this. And it finally got to a point, to what you were saying as well, where I started being like, why am I thinking this way? Why am I feeling this way? You know what? If it works for them, great. But that doesn't mean it works for me. And I have to own that, because if I show up going, I really don't want to be doing this, but everyone says I have to be able to get there, then I'm not going to be my best. And then who's that really serving? Am I really going to make money doing it?
Yeah. And that takes a lot of discipline and self-awareness that younger entrepreneurs don't have, newer entrepreneurs don't have. And I find that people who don't question other people don't have. So my people are questioners, not necessarily rebels, but they're not going to take the first thing. And there's something that comes when you're older, right? You've been around the blocks. You know it's not going to work for you. You've gone down that route. You've wasted time. So with your scenario, you might have been really successful because if you have a full team doing it, courses can be created by AI. You could automate as much of that as you wanted to, and you might be successful. However, if at some point in your business you wanted to simplify, you're like, I don't want a team, I'm going to do this myself. That wouldn't work. And then you got to burn it all down because you put yourself in a lane that probably didn't differentiate you from other people, probably didn't utilize your unique gifts. And it's not necessarily about what's going to make material success, because someone else could be like, well, I made 7 figures and I did it great. Are you happy? Is this what you want to do in 5 years? You can push yourself to do anything if you're smart, driven, can, hire people to do stuff you don't want to do. I could have outsourced a lot of aspects of that physical product towards the end at break even. It would have been profitable at break even, but I wouldn't have launched what I'm doing now.
Why do you think as you just mentioned too, a lot of entrepreneurs who are starting their entrepreneurial journey or younger entrepreneurs fall into that more easily, even if they're getting, and why might that mentorship be so important so they don't fall down kind of that rabbit hole?
You froze.
Here for a second. Sunita.
You froze. Now.
Okay, so we're going to pause for a second. I'll re-ask the question and then Ben can edit it. Sunita, why do you think that young entrepreneurs in their entrepreneurial journey or younger individuals tend to fall into that trap, I would say, more? And how can, whether you're just starting your entrepreneurial journey or your years in, kind of make sure that your mindset is sharp enough to question things. Can you hear me now?
What's going on? I don't know what's going on.
I don't know. Your thing keeps like changing from red to yellow.
Sorry, this never happens. Okay.
Sorry. It's okay. I'll pause. I'll re-ask the question again.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Sunita, so what you had mentioned that it tends to be younger entrepreneurs in their entrepreneurial journey, or younger individuals in general, that tend not to question or lean into, this might not work for me. What is a tool set that someone can use to make sure that they're always thinking, is this really aligned with how I want to show up in my business?
I think that happens for a couple of reasons, and I'll give you a tool. People who are newer on their journey, I don't think it's necessarily age. I think it's that they don't know, right? So you mentioned I have an MBA. I come into the entrepreneurial space understanding marketing, understanding positioning, understanding branding, and my design is a very strong BS detector. So I'm immediately going to ignore people who I'm like, this is grifter strategy. People don't have that discernment because they're like, I don't know. I'm new. I'm going to look to what success is. This person's successful. I'm going to copy what they do. So that's the newer entrepreneur. There is something about F around and find out that cannot be replicated. Those reps, that experience, that I went in the wrong direction, I didn't get what I needed out of it, that cannot be replicated in theory. So that's the bigger picture. To answer your question about what they can do, so in human design, we're a body graph and we have influence centers. So to make this very high level, I've got some filled in, you've got some filled in. Some are colored in, some are not colored in. Where I'm colored in, I'm me. Where I'm not colored in, I'm taking in influence. So each of us is going to have some centers where we're not colored in. So knowing yourself is it, because if you know, okay, I'm influenced in that way, you're like, okay, I'm going to this conference. I'm going to want to buy everything everybody says. I go to the lunch, and what she's doing, she's launching a podcast, I got to launch a podcast. She's on TikTok, I got to be on TikTok. You know yourself to know this is temporary. You walk away, you step away, then you go back to your life. If that still is something you're like, you know what, I really want to do that, like 48 hours later, 72 hours later, then you act on it. And the challenge is most people buy before they get to that point. Now we're in sunken cost mentality.
And I love that example because it is something that's so true. A lot of times when you pull back and sit, and that's why too, even on sales calls, a lot of salespeople be like, try close in that first call, just push. But I go back, and even when you were just saying that example, I was thinking about myself. I try not to buy in the first call because I know that depending on how good that person can be selling or painting this picture, might not be reality. And like you said, I've gotten better and better over the years to like very quickly pick up on that and be like, BS, okay, keep moving. You know, this is obviously not what's going to happen. But there's times where I'm like, oh, this could be really good. And I get reminded, just wait a few days, just sit on it, think about it. And there's even been times in those few days I've gone back and I'm like, every time I go back to your point, I'm like, okay, is this really worth the value? Like, where does this sit? And I just go in and I start questioning more and more. By the end, I'm like, okay, yep, no. And it works. But I want to also go into more of those takeaways because I love your insight here. And when someone comes to you and says, and I know you said you work with more seasoned entrepreneurs who feel stuck and all of that. But when someone comes to you and they say, I've done all the right things and I'm still not where I want to be. What are you actually seeing what they're not?
That's my superpower. That's the alchemy. Because if I was not an alchemist, I could optimize what they're doing. I can see under the hood. And this is a combination of they're not operating in their design. They're not leveraging their superpowers. I can see when they're operating from an old identity. They're doing something to please a past version of themselves, a past version of the entrepreneur they were. I've seen this in women who leave corporate and it's their first business. They are trying to leverage the skills they did in corporate in their new business because that would make sense, but they don't actually want to do that. And then I'm like, well, this is actually what you're here to do. It might dovetail with some skills, probably, but it might be something completely different. So if you think that the body is wise, it is going to give you roadblocks. It is going to hold you back. It is going to procrastinate. It is going to tell you, I'll do it tomorrow, because it knows it's not the right direction for you in a way that your mind doesn't. So what I can see is I use a combination of factors. I look at many things and I'm a surgical. I am instantaneous. I know before someone books with me, I even know before I have talked to them. I don't need to know about their business. Yes, I need to know about their business, but I'm like looking at them and I can feel through frequency, through insight, through precision, through your positioning is off. You're not attracting your ideal client because of X, Y, Z. You're trying to put yourself in this lane, but you should be in this lane. This is holding you back. You're influenced by this. It's hard to articulate. It is instantaneous. The way a mechanic can look at a car and have done it so many times that they're like, this is your gasket. You need this. No, it's not that. That guy told you it's that. He's trying to sell you bullshit. BS, whatever. It's hard to explain, but it's a variety of inputs. That's their business, their identity, their design. And where I think that they are in a belief that they need to do X, but they should do Y. Should, I put shoulds in quotes. I never tell people what they do, but I think they would be better suited to do Y.
And also, one thing you brought up there as well is like serving or standing in a position of doing actions or serving others the way that no longer is where you are because you've grown as an individual business owner, this and that. And so before I move on to my next question I want to cover that a little bit because, you know, one constant thing is in life is change. So how often do you believe that as entrepreneurs, we should take a step back and really do a reflection, if you want to call it, or evaluation and go, is this really aligned anymore? Or have I need to focus on a new product, a new service, because that is really where I'm starting to feel the trajectory and pull towards. Should that be every day? Should it be like once a quarter? Once a year? Is it a gut feeling? What is your thoughts on that?
I think it's an internal and an external marker. I don't think it's like a thing that's a quarterly time-based thing. Well, people I work with are very intuitive women. So one of two things is happening. What I said, they're not taking action. They are like, I'm self-sabotaging myself. But action takers don't generally do that. We're all human. It's usually something bigger going on. It's a indicator. We need to stop. We need to reevaluate. Or the market is telling you. You are attracting clients with ease before, you aren't. You are attracting misaligned clients. You are someone that I'm like, you just move through the world and opportunities open up and you're like, I'm just manifesting, I'm in flow all the time, and all of a sudden you're not. That's an external indicator. Usually it's the internal one first, and then the external will mirror your internal state. So I tend to meet people at pivot points. This is when they have an established business, but what they did is no longer working. They're in transition from one business model to a completely different model. Or they were in one lane and what they were doing in that lane no longer fits their new belief system, their new client they want to attract, their new philosophy on the world, the lane they want to carve for themselves. An example of this is a client I just worked with. She was a dietitian, career dietitian. And she never really was into the diet culture and the macros and the women have to track their weight and this and that. And she's been moving towards more of holistic spiritual connection, light particles, the whole body, women, having gratitude for their bodies and getting strong versus trying to control them. So her clientele is going to switch. And if she was working with insurance before, now she can't do that in insurance. So now she has to build a brand outside of that. So what does that look like? So that's what we did. That's an example of someone who stayed in one lane, but it's a different lane. Or then I've got people who have been in one lane for 10 years and it's no longer working. They're like, now what? Mm-hmm. It's because they have changed, but they don't see how they've changed. I can see how they've changed.
And what is that like when you give that perspective and that insight of like, no, you've changed or the market's changed and this is where you align. What is that moment for the entrepreneur where everything kind of, I'm assuming, clicks and there's that direction again, but please give some insights into that.
It is something I'll say a client said to me, clarity that feels like an exhale. It is, they already knew it. It was just below their subconscious awareness, their conscious awareness. It's a term I call catalyzed subconscious integration. Because if I am just telling you that, you're going to fight me. But if I'm telling you what you already know, at some level in your soul, in your body, you're like, she's right. It cracks. And then we apply strategy. But if you are applying tactics on top of that, it's never going to work. It's never going to work. If you are an intuitive, what I call soul-aligned woman, which is what I usually work with, they go with their gut. They know when they're off. They're not just in it for the money, although that is part of it. If it doesn't feel right, they're going to run into a different roadblock in 6 months. Mm-hmm. Right? One of the things that we shared when we did, the pre-call for this is that what our best job is we basically put ourselves out of business, both of us, right? Mm-hmm. People don't have to work with me for very long because I keep track of my clients. I'm like, how are you doing? They're like, I'm doing this, I'm great. Because once you're on the path, okay, well then maybe you hire the tactician. Maybe then you decide I'm on TikTok versus Facebook, whatever. If that's not the point, you're on the path. You are doing what you're here to do. You are excited. You are lit up. You're attracting aligned opportunities. You're attracting aligned clients. And you're not going to fight it because it feels right.
And that's one thing, too. It's funny you bring that up because after our call, I started picking up. I have an amazing mentor and I sit in some of her group sessions and things like that. And I started realizing, I was like, yep, this isn't where my time should be spent after our call too, because we talked about that and I was like, yeah, 100% agree. Like you should want your clients. And that's why too, there's a level of here's the outcome at the end of the day with my services done for you or my systems that you can implement because you should complete something. And then there's a different path and direction. And like that is so fulfilling because you also know you're helping someone and it's not that fight. And then I was sitting in this call like a few days later and I'm like, okay, I gave a response to that and it was like a group conversation and I'm the expert in that topic and I got pushback and I was like, the pushback on it from the person running it to help others was not the best plan. She kind of knew it wasn't the best path forward. It was about podcasting. And I was like, well, that's not really how you should look about it. And the response was, you're right. And I understand why you're saying that. But if you just want exposure, like go get on, like sign up for this, go get it. And I was like, okay, you're helping them, but is the help strategically placed for them to get to a point to go, oh, I don't need this anymore? Or is it kind of pushing them, but still in a way that needs support and always feeling there's that support?
People, work with me in advisory for as long as they want afterwards. It's almost like not training wheels, but it's like making sure that they're, I call myself a business alchemist and a clarity architect. The clarity architect is afterwards. I'm seeing the path before you can. We're keeping you aligned as you're in your new trajectory or your new way of operating in the world. we talk about design a lot. In human design, there's like people we have different roles we're here to play. I am kind of a surgeon. You don't want to see your surgeon every month or you got problems. So I use all these tools as my X-ray, my MRI, whatever. I fix you, solve your problem, get you sorted, alchemize you. Alchemy is transformation. You should not be the same afterwards if you work with someone who considers themselves an alchemist, or it's marketing. If you're the same before you met them, that wasn't alchemy, that was coaching, which is fine. And it depends on your business model. If you're a mindset coach, I can see you staying with a mindset coach for years if they are getting you to the 6-figure mark, the 7-figure mark. Usually it's a different coach, I would think, but you're going to never be done with belief change work if that speaks to you. With me, I'm really fast. That's part of my brand. I'm really precise. People value time over like sitting on Zoom all day with me. In the same place 6 months later. And then you're good like 6 years later. Your business is going to change. You're going to need somebody else. Like you're going to need other people to guide you, but your core is solid. It's kind of like gardening. You root that plant in. If it's a perennial, you don't have to keep doing it. Like it's solid. You have to maintain it and all that. And, I think we have to separate. So that's my role. And if I know that's my role and I'm attracting clients who don't want that, well, that's a misalignment. Making more money, I'm not going to get the testimonials I do, which sound like I paid people. I'm not going to get that fulfillment that I'm doing what I'm here to do. And I'm going to feel drained. I've done long coaching containers briefly when I started. I'm not built for that. I'm here to get you going, get you sorted, and then I'm on to the next person. And a lot of the ego and the business model and the revenue model is built into people as a business owner versus what's best for the end client.
What is I know you kind of gave some insight to this in what you were just saying, but as a consultant, as someone who is serving others through services, I'll say that specifically, what level of importance do you think it is to really look at the customer's outputs and like how long they're in the system, how they feel going through that process, how fast it is versus like, okay, one thing I hear a lot too is like, what is the ROI per person that is in your ecosystem long term? And it's like, does that really, in your opinion, twofold question, really like, should that really be a question you're asking? And yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah. I mean, for me, yes. Somebody else is like, no, you need to keep them in their ecosystem for 3 years for maximum ROI. That's not my philosophy on business. That's not my definition of success. I literally checked in with a client 2 months ago because it had been 2 months. I was like, how you doing? She's like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. Can I write you a LinkedIn testimonial? Can I elevate you? My clients are like, how do I get more people to know about you? That is a metric of success because that means that every dime they spent was worth it. And if you are attracting aligned clients, we're going to have mismatches, but if you're going to attract aligned clients, they should be succeeding during and after, within a reasonable time frame after you're done. If that's not the case and that is not part of your evaluation system, I don't know what you're doing. Are you in service? Now, if I attract a newbie business owner that doesn't know anything and doesn't know what she's selling or who she's selling to and has never sold to a client, I may not be able to achieve success for her. So I'm ensuring that for my higher ticket work, she's not hiring me. And people, at least up until now, things are changing, got away with that. They would get your money and then you're screwed. And I was in a group coaching thing. It was I'm not proud of the decision I made to get this. I didn't think about it. It's a learning. I don't want to tell you how much money. We don't need to talk about it. It's bad. And we had people in that program who were at the point they had outgrew one-to-one. So they're doing coaching containers. They passed the 6-figure mark. And women who were like, what's a lead magnet?
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think got left behind? Who do you think dropped a lot of money that they shouldn't have and should have never been in that program? I knew better. They didn't know better. Mm-hmm. And got the money.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I got to say, this is what is going to be a problematic thing. This is what concerns me about that. And it speaks to the influence thing we talked about, and it speaks to what you said about that group call you were on. Well, a lot of what I believe these programs do is they use the group think, and it actually makes people worse than if they weren't in it at all. Because it makes people question themselves, doubt themselves. Well, she's killing it, and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not meant to be an entrepreneur. I'm not meant to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's horrible. I think that's criminal.
Yeah, I agree. And even in one of them that I was in, for example, I had someone who doesn't have a podcast. Again, this is like my wheelhouse, right? Having a globally ranked podcast and this and that. Give me advice on how to get, I'm trying to remember if it was like about getting guests. And I looked at her and I was like, thank you for that insight. And appreciate you wanting to give me that perspective. It was someone else in there, but I was like, I don't have a problem with that. If I took every guest I got, I'd be good to release episodes every day for the next 3 years. That isn't what we're talking about. And as a globally ranked podcast host, there's a different level. Again, it was like kind of this idea of just, we'll take people like this. And I'm like, that's not the point. That's not the alignment. And so sometimes when you're in those aspects of, okay, let's all kind of give that group think. If you come from a place, like I will only speak in those rooms if we're talking about building authority, using your voice, what is good paths. And I will speak on the topic of podcasting. Or, hey, I love Calendly because XYZ. And did you know there's these features? I will give insight on what I have found has worked or not for me based on my experience or podcasting. I will not go and tell anyone, oh, maybe go try these clients or not my wheelhouse. That's not the space I'm in. I should not be speaking. And so to me, too, what gets me and gets my blood a little boiling is when you're stepping into those environments. It's like, here's the point. So we can all bounce ideas off each other and do this and that. But it's like, if you are just throwing thought out there, it can really affect, to your point, mindset, how someone really actually does their business. And you don't know if that person's coming from BS or not.
Right. If people aren't discerning, they don't have the confidence, they don't have my background and my design is very closed. I'm only open to conditioning in certain areas. I have clients that are completely open. They are all over the place. They're like, I heard this podcast, this person said this. That I'm like, okay, when I'm working with you, you're going to stop. You're not listening to these podcasts anymore. We're going to stop because you're going crazy. And so I'll give you an example of that. I am not a podcast growth strategist. I have a podcast and it is successful by what I want at this time. What game are you playing at any given time? Something else I also say to people. And I gave a talk recently about your podcast as your unique value proposition to local podcasters, a local group I'm in New England as a thank you. Local group. It's on YouTube, whatever. And I was talking about your podcast as resonance based on your human design and attracting your aligned client, because I've been successful with that on my podcast against industry metrics. 20 downloads, high ticket clients. Doesn't make any sense. I was very upfront when I got on the mic. I was like, I am not a podcast growth strategist. I am not a podcast expert. I'm not telling you how to grow your podcast. I'm not telling you how to become more visible. I'm just saying, before you focus on scaling your podcast to the moon, you're a solopreneur, making sure that your unique sauce is baked in. That's all I did. And, you know, it was also not a paid group. I mean, it was a paid group, but it wasn't like a high-ticket mastermind. And frankly, I think my advice was great because I know the advice I've gotten from a lot of people who are podcast growth strategists. I'm like, your marketing and your branding sucks. So I'm not listening to you. If people wanted blind leading the blind, they could be in a free Facebook group.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing too, like you just mentioned, it's giving the clarity of like, this is my experience. This is what I found. But I love how you brought up that you're also like, hey, I get 20 downloads. Because I hear so much from people who are guests and they're like, is this alignment? They'll ask about numbers. They'll ask about, you know, how many places you are. Okay, great. But I recently even did a talk, Facebook Live. I've done articles on this. Is like the idea of going viral is, and what a lot of people are pushing for social media right now is not the place you should really be looking. It's the 20 people that are actually staying, that are actually converting. That number holds way more weight and helps you way farther than being able to say, yeah, I get 1,000 a week. If nothing is happening and that is only a number that is out there. Like, to what you were saying earlier in our whole conversation, what is the actual goal of doing XYZ? How will it make you feel? How will it move the needle? Because if you have a podcast, that to me is a very successful podcast. That is something I would tell all my clients, right? I shouldn't say everyone because people are in different spaces, but like that is a very successful podcast. If you tell me, yeah, I have a podcast, I've been doing it for 4 years, I get 1,000 views, and I'm like, what's your goal? And are they converting? And you go to me, no, and like nothing happens. I just put it out there and kind of hope and pray it works. Well, you don't got a strategy. You don't know. It's just what noise at that point. Like, what is really the proof here? And that's the thing that also gets me in so many people, you know, creating Facebook groups and all these different things that they're being told is like, does that actually move the needle for you? Like, I, for example, a while back, like hosted a networking group once a week, an hour. And I invited people to it and people were showing up for the first few weeks. It was getting traction. And then it like kind of died off. And I had a friend of mine who was like, oh, it really works for me. I get, you know, people interested. They then end up booking a one-on-one call, signing. Really works. You should keep with it. And I said to her, okay, I'll keep with it for one more month. So 4 weeks. If in those 4 weeks, no one comes up, I'm stopping this because now it's a waste of my time and I could be doing other things. Obviously, it's not working for me. She's like, you should do it longer than that. I'm like, again, right? When you're an entrepreneur that makes move, like you said, you give that window and that runway, but you also know when enough's enough. And I gave it 4 weeks and I was getting like 1 week. I had one person show up and it was a great one-on-one conversation. They did end up converting, but I was like, I could have just put them on my calendar and used this time. You know, they could have had the availability to be put on my calendar. So even that, where it's like, there's a level that I think having someone like yourself be able to say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Here's the real strategy. Try this, try that. Instead of, there's all these people online saying XYZ, let me just throw the spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks scenario. And also being able to understand, like, this person, why does it work for them? What is the why? Where do they sit? Because everyone's why is different. And like you said earlier, it could be they kind of just fell into that. It could be they built something behind the scenes for years and then they kind of pivoted, like you were talking about, and that's why it now works. Mm-hmm. And so I think understanding that and having that picture is also really important. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I mean, it all comes back to how you're designed, right? And it's like, I am a one line in human design, which means I go deep. And game are you playing? You know you. You seem like someone who's like, boom, boom, boom. You're like, this isn't working. This is a waste of time. I'm going to go on to something else. This is not a good return on investment for my XYZ things on my plate. Great. my podcast, it's not 20 now, it was 20 when I started. And my goal with the podcast is I'm going to throw this out here. Now, I did my research. I have a background in marketing and had a positioning. Clear signal is all about influence, right? Influence out, influence in, you get it, right? But I got traction right away. I had no website. I had no social proof. Nobody knew who I was. And I did that on purpose. It is counter to what any business coach would say makes any logical sense. And that's why I did it. So I could speak at a talk and say, this is what I did. This is what worked for me. I'm pretty unique in my design, unique background, may not work for everybody. But, I gave myself a long runway to figure out what I wanted to do with the podcast. It changed 6 times in 1 year. I started teaching human design. I set a foundation. Now we've shifted more into strategy. I'm going to lose those first people who were there for the free teaching. And I'm doing that aware that I'm planting seeds for the future. That is not how someone else would say that's return on investment. They would say you're putting a lot of time and energy in at the beginning without an immediate return. And I know where I'm going. So for me, that works. For somebody else, doesn't work. But the difference is I don't want somebody else to decide what is going to work for them based on short-term thinking from somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Or just short-term thinking in general, I think, is not good.
It's not good. And then everyone's going to be, well, where's the runway? How are you doing this? This doesn't make sense, blah, blah, blah. So that's where I get into, okay, like I'm a long-term thinker. I think long-term, I'm intentional and I'm slow and I own it. And you know what? A coach once said, don't call yourself slow, call yourself intentional. I'm going to steal that. But, it's like, you know how this works. You get results by getting people growth right away, getting people a client right away, getting people an X right away. If it's not rooted in the right strategy, the cash is there. You check that box, that person was good. 6 months later, you're screwed and you're back into square one. You built a podcast you don't want. You're at everyone's like, you have to do weekly download. You have to do weekly, those things you got to do. There are so many women in particular who burn out from podcasting because they listen to, I have to do guest podcasts. I have to do video. I have to do every week. I have to do whatever. Again, I am not a growth strategist. There are certain rules to life about how podcasting works. I'm just saying, if you're not going to stick to it long term, no rule matters.
Oh, yeah, agree. And specifically on podcasting, that is something when I sit down with people who are thinking about starting a podcast, even guesting, I'll sit down, we'll get in an initial conversation, like, tell me about what's going on in your business and life right now. And they're like, wait, what? And I'm like, I need to know the time you have. I need to know like what your runway, what your thinking is. Is this something you're trying to do right away, 3 months from now? Like, what does that look like? Even if you don't know. And there's times someone will come to me and they'll be like, I want to start a podcast. And then we dive into that. And I'm like, no, you don't. Because you're going to become one of the stats because of XYZ. Now, you can do that in 3 months when you tell me this is done and you have more space. But right now, being a guest is what really works. Or vice versa will happen. Or I'll be like, hey, let's revisit this. Because I think to just start anything, just to say, yeah, I did it, you're asking for the burnout to kind of happen if you're not excited about it every step of the way. And excitement can look different. There's days you're working it out and you're like, oh, I'm tired. But you're like, I'm excited for when I'm able to serve someone through this. And that's what the goal is versus the, yeah, I'll just do this. We'll see what happens mentality. And
it's not based in design. It's not based in the way women work. It's not based in reality. It's based on artificial metrics of growth, which makes sense. It's like saying, oh yeah, of course, maybe you'll be in better shape if you go to the gym 3 times a week for every week this year. Maybe you might go actually stick to it if you went 2 times a week, as an example. Are you going to be a bodybuilder? No. Are you going to build that muscle and habit? Yes. So, I told my podcast I'm on break for April. Mm-hmm. Right now it's tribal. I can get away with that. Newbie may not come back. No one cares. If you're delivering quality, no one cares. This notion like, oh, if you don't, you're like a Wonder Bread, they'll find another slot for. If you're Wonder Bread, you shouldn't have a podcast. Mm-hmm. If somebody else can just fill their ears with someone who is just like you don't have a unique value proposition, you shouldn't have a podcast because then you sound like everybody else and you're just noise. That person's not going to buy from you. Because you're just
They feel,
in your garden.
yeah.
Your background noise for them.
Well, and that's just like when I hear the 20 pitches about I'm a leadership coach. I can answer questions on leadership. I'm like, okay, and like, or burnout. And I'm like, are we just using buzzwords here? Like, what is happening?
I got a great example for this. So like you as someone who helps people with their strategy for being on podcasts, right? You would look at what I'm doing right now and be like, I do not recommend this. Because what I did right now this spring was I went on a variety of different podcasts. So I could figure out what do I like, what do I not like, what are the podcasts that feel like a fit, what don't. I used to not love these intro calls because it's extra time on my calendar. But I have found that the podcasts where I had an intro call first were more organized, were better used, they were more real. And you know the podcast churn thing. I would get on these podcasts, the person had no idea who I was, had done no research on me. Their team would send me a file that was a raw file, not finished assets. I'm like, you want me to create your reels? What are we doing here? So I just put it up on my podcast as a podcast. I was like, okay, I got the file. Let's go. And I gave them credit and all that. I said, this is this person's podcast. I linked their podcast. But someone's like, well, what would you recommend for someone who's suffering from burnout? I was like, I'm not a burnout coach. I don't work with entrepreneurs who are burnt out. My people aren't burnt out. They are not hustle people. They are people that are misaligned, which is related. It's not quite the same thing.
And I want to go, I know we're getting towards the end of time, so I want to ask this question before we wrap up. Is for you, how can you identify if someone's misaligned or they're really getting towards that burnout, this just isn't right mentality?
Up until now, the clients that have found me have not been burnout clients. I had one client who came to me who was burnout, and then she was running a 7-figure, huge, she was not what I would call seasoned, she's what I would call established. And her team was looking for her to be the solution for everything. And she was taking on everybody else's problems. And her design is such that she's going to be the problem solver. And she was unconsciously becoming the problem solver. And she didn't have the right boundaries in place because she didn't know it. Awareness is key. When I said you are going to unconsciously be the problem solver, changed. She's like, okay, now I know why my assistant thinks I'm the solve. So that's burnout because she's trying to be CEO and she's in the clinic and she's taking care of everything administrative. I'm like, well, that's non-functional. To answer your question about misalignment, I'm able to use like an MRI, X-ray. I use different energetic tools as a diagnostic. And by looking at it, vibe, skill, gift, I'm like, this is what's not working. Mm-hmm. So that is actually done before I met with people. All the prep work I do is before. I already know before I say one, which is why I'm so fast. I come in knowing. You don't have to tell me everything about your life and your childhood. And I'm not a therapist. It's like, this isn't working. This is why your identity is off. Not in those words. Mm-hmm. I don't use the word identity, but it's like, they know. Mm-hmm. They know because something I said on a podcast or on my podcast, they're like, that is what was missing. I didn't know what it was. But when it was named, oh, she's on track. Mm-hmm. That has been the people who have come to me until now because I built it through resonance. Now I'm growing more visible. But everybody come to me through now has been just like vibe. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know that's not a marketing strategy, but I recommend that to people because you get that really pure data. Yeah. And if you're putting a certain feel out there and knowledge up, it will attract the right people. You put in the work, right, with your podcast, for example, and since we've brought that up a few times, you understand it's a long game and not trying to get the instant results, then yeah, it will start feeding everything else. It's an ecosystem. And you have to understand that. Well, Sunita, how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you? So my brand is I am Sunita Kumar, my first and last name, everywhere. So if it exists on the web, I am Sunita Kumar. My website is the Linktree, which has all my places. I'll give that to you. Clear Signal, my podcast. great place to start to get my personality, my opinions, my knowledge, whatever, and see if, you want to be in my ecosystem.
Thank you, Sunita, for all of your insight today. This was a really fun conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And a few of our key takeaways from today's conversation include, is it a to-do versus a get-to? I love how Sunita started with that, and in telling her story about her products she had and her journey in that, because I think it's so important to have those moments where we're understanding as maybe we need to pivot. Maybe there's misalignment. We talked about a lot today as well of like, is this even on the rough days, you get to do it, or are you turning everything into, I have to do it, and pushing it off like Sunita said, because that is a clear indicator that there is misalignment there as well. And that goes into our next thing, listening to your body. Your body, as Sunita said, will most likely start to tell you when you have that push and pull happening internally, like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. But then you're like, okay, I could put it off a week, or I could, do this, or I'm not really feeling like I want to do it. Listen to those feelings. As Sunita said as well, like when you're seeing things and understanding who you are and how she helps clients is going, okay, if you're going to that conference and you're going to get hyped up and be like, oh, this person's doing XYZ, I should be doing it, and walk away with 20 things you now feel like you have to implement in your business. Sit with it for 48 hours, 72 hours. That's okay. I think that's a great advice as well for when you're scrolling on social media and you're seeing these golden ticket opportunities, as we've kind of talked about, the group sessions, the like, just do XYZ and you can make it 6-7 figures, is like, sit with that and then follow back up with it. If there's the immediate, like, oh, I have to do this feeling, because that might not be there 48 hours later. There might be that thing in your brain that goes, okay, is this really aligned? Are you asking questions, right? Questions, as we've discussed, will give you a lot of insight on if it is actually aligned for you and how you can serve others. I love how Sunita also brought up of like, you as a coach, as a consultant, you shouldn't want someone in your ecosystem for years. Like, are you really serving them? And that should be a foundation. And I love how Sunita brought up, what game are you currently playing? What is the game you want to play? And what are you currently playing, and how are you operating in that? And the last thing I want to say is awareness is key. So understanding where you are, where the business is, where the industry is, and understanding where the client is. And so one thing I'm going to challenge everyone today as well is go through your day. And if you're starting to feel like this is on the to-do list versus the get-to list, sit with that for a minute and really try to understand why you're feeling that way. This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, Sunita Kumar. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.